This is the Raw and Radical Woman in the Arts podcast, and I am your host, Maureen Broadbeck.
Raw, unprocessed.
In each episode, we explore the mechanisms of identity, vulnerability, authenticity, empowerment, and social change through conversations with inspiring women who are making history and challenging the status quo in both the art world and in society.
Radical rebel. Progressive.
We talk about their real-life challenges and celebrate cis and transgender women so that you can be inspired, empowered, take action, and further your critical understanding about what it means to be a woman in the arts.
Woman feminism. A revolutionary catalyzing reformation. Radical.
Today I am welcoming Nadine Wietlishbach. She's the director of the Photo Museum Winterthur in Switzerland since January 2018. She is working together with an interdisciplinary team with whom she creates exhibitions, publications, and projects in other discursive formats in the field of contemporary photography and arts. She was the director of the Photo Forum Passcard in Bienne in Switzerland after she worked as a curator at the Nidwalder Museum in Stans. In 2015, she won the Swiss Art Award for Critic Publication Exhibition category, and she was the curator in residence at the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Chicago. Nadine founded the independent art space SICK, Raum für Kunst in Lucerne in Switzerland in 2007, which still exists and is run now by the third generation of collaborators. She is very interested in the diversity of the photographic media, and we loved her for her punk attitude and insight on standing for your ideas and visions. Please welcome Nadine Wietlishbach. Hi Nadine, welcome to the show.
Hello, Maureen. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. Could you please tell us a little bit about your background and why did you get interested in curating?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a funny story because before I studied, I did an apprenticeship as a carpenter. And through the firm I did my apprenticeship, I was actually working in a lot of rather large houses in Zurich.
Yeah.
And some of them, they were really well equipped with artworks.
All right.
And I remember one very particular moment where I was like working on a wooden floor, and I was like looking up because my colleague was like asking to bring him some tools, and all of a sudden I realized that there was this huge painting by Franz Gertsch. And I was really amazed by this painting, and sort of that was, that initiated my interest in the arts.
Yeah.
And that's how sort of I started to be interested in visual arts, let's say as a subject.
Yeah.
And then later on, when I studied, I moved to Lucerne. And I got this weird opportunity to actually start writing about art and artistic practices, and also meet a lot of artists, my own generation, but also older ones. And eventually I took over an independent art space, which is now in the almost fourth generation of young curators. And all of them, I think, identify as female.
That's excellent, yeah.
So, but I had this moment where I was maybe 15, where I started to become more and more aware of art as a subject. Yeah. I didn't grow up with art, so it took me a bit longer.
Yeah, but we each have our own path, right? And that's what is really cool. Because you draw your inspiration from literature, film, cinema, poetry, and theoretical texts, such as feminist text. Could you explain what are the common links between what inspires you? What makes you tick?
Yeah, I think all those disciplines have their own sort of narrative, their own texture, their own way of actually taking up space or creating space. There are some interesting also ideas about how to draw inspiration from something, but then it only becomes reality when you actually start really working on it. Yeah. And I think that's the case with a theoretical text. You maybe first start to read, and then it takes some time to process, and then eventually it becomes something very inspirational for your practice. I'm sure that's the same for you as an artist than it is for me as a curator. But I think what makes it really interesting, or the people I'm particularly interested in, what makes them interesting to me is because they are really aware of ambivalence. And the potential to reshaping something we would sort of assume is the case or some sort of reality, and that they are actually really challenging our perception, no matter if it's in written form or if it's a visual language. It's really challenging the viewer. And I think that's what sort of binds them together for me personally.
Yeah, because I understand this attraction and inspiration from filmmaking, because this is where I come from, filmmaking. This is where I started. And there's something about creating this experience and making something immersive with the cinema that's very special, because it brings us the sense of time, space, memory, and also sound and imagery together. I realized that when you curate exhibition, you are very sensitive to bringing these senses together, to mixing these elements, you know, and I'm interested in how you perceive narration, space and time to create an atmosphere, an exhibition, and why is this important to you? Because I noticed we have a common hero, which is Harmony Korine. I absolutely love his films.
Yeah, I mean, also because he's a very difficult also author when it comes to work ethic. I still believe that his visual language is incredibly unique, but apparently the way he's working with people is not really something I'm trying to follow. But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, this way of telling a story, and that's really exciting.
So what is for you interesting in bringing these elements of cinema together for creating an exhibition or an atmosphere?
It's a very interesting question. I'm thinking about creating a space where you can both maybe experience the magic and the sheer horror of images, or the context which we are trying to create, I think, as curators and also as art educators, as writers at Photo Museum, is really also this idea that photography as a medium is, despite its many possibilities to shape or also create progress and to sort of enable different voices, it does exclude. I mean, still, it's a very problematic medium as such. So I try to create sort of a safe surrounding, which is welcoming, and that it actually gives the best possible outlook on an artistic practice or on a medium. Obviously, when it's a particular artistic practice, usually I work a lot with living artists. So it's really creating together with them the best framework for their work. And then if it's a thematical approach, I just really try to create a space where the different voices, their stage and enough sort of space, to install their work and to show their work. And then again, also when it comes to programming beyond the actual spatial vessel, like the museum space, maybe through events and also obviously publications, it's sort of like multifaceted, the approach. So it's like you were saying, it's the museum space or other vessels, they have sort of different accessibilities. And I think I'm trying to create those accessibilities the best way possible.
Yeah, that brings me to the point where you talked about creating exhibitions, and you said exhibition making has to do a lot with practice and experiencing and learning along the way. And I really love this idea of not having to know it all and have to do it perfectly and still moving forward and follow your vision. You mentioned it is important to take up space. And could you talk about this?
At home, I have a little note by Audre Lorde, and it says, life is very short. What we have to do must be done in the now.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's very true, especially now. And I have this very strong belief that no vision is becoming a livable experience by only dreaming and writing about it. It sort of takes resources and ideas, people who are sort of committed to this vision in order to make it happen. Maybe that's what I'm sort of trying to do every day, to actually make things happen and to keep a process going, no matter if you succeed or if you fail. But I think actually working in the space, creating shows, is so much about trying out things, not only moving around objects, but actually also really moving around concepts.
Yeah.
And this is not something you can learn in a scholarly way.
Yeah.
I mean, I have really, really high expectations of sort of academical approaches towards creating. And I'm also very glad to take part in conversations about concepts.
Yeah.
But whenever I work with very experienced curators or very young colleagues, this is sort of something everybody can agree on, that it's actually about trying out and really doing rather than just thinking about shows. It's very practical also. It's a lot of people forget how practical curating actually is, in a sense that after the concept, the selection has been done, it's really also about creating a narrative in the space.
It's a creative process, and the act of stepping into action is really key, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's something very important in my eyes about justification, especially for women. The act of having to justify yourself, especially when you're a little outside of the norm, outside of the usual canvas. Could you tell us about how your background that was considered, or that is considered unusual, made it difficult for you to access some positions in larger institutions?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I felt like never really fitting into a particular box. For a long time, it was a real issue, because it's true that I didn't get access. Like when I was still running this independent art space, I was incredibly curious about collections, and I really wanted to gain some experience. And wherever I sent my application, everybody was saying, yes, you have all this experience in actually working on shows and writing texts, being like sort of a critical thinker when it comes to visual arts, but you don't have a formal education, meaning I was not a trained art historian.
Yeah.
So for a long time, this was an issue for me because I couldn't get access. And then I got really lucky, and I was like sort of, people trusted in my curiosity. Like right now, I would say they really trusted in my curiosity, and they made it possible for me to access. But I lived through those different phases of both being very rebellious and also very tired. And I think maybe it was, before I became a curator in a museum, like I just said, when I became a mother and stayed on the job. And then again, when I actually became director of the institution I'm currently working at Photo Museum.
So do you think that as a woman, you had different or more challenges than men had to face in those positions?
Yeah, I think as a woman, also maybe as a young woman in a certain position, you have to deal with very, very high expectations. And they are sort of coming from all different kinds of sides, and they all have different agendas. Like people have different agendas, how through they formulate their expectations. And I think it's really, really important to know what your own interest is as a curator, because becoming a director means that you are also shifting your own perception of yourself as a curator, because it becomes one of the tasks or one of the greatest possibilities to still work on, like curating shows, but then you also are responsible for a lot of other things. So it's finding your focus and also actually staying true to what you actually believe in. That's maybe one very big challenge. And I think that's the same for everybody in a position similar to mine. But I think the only way to actually go through it without losing your head is actually finding people you trust. They don't need to have the exact same idea about things, but you need to find common ground. So I would say, finding allies is crucial, and to be able to ask for support, to be able to exchange ideas, and also, maybe to find people who share the same sense of ironic humor. That is also helping a great deal.
Because you said, and I'm going to quote you, you said, exhibition making will always be a collaborative effort. So what's your view on the power of collaboration?
When I think about looking back at how curating has changed over the past 15 years, 17 years. During this period, I was really active as a curator. The perception of curatorial projects has also shifted. And the idea of this sort of singular, heroic curator figure has changed. And I'm very, very happy about these changes because you are never the curator of a project without the artist, without the editor, without the person working in the technical department. It's not about you. As a curator, you are supposed to create the framework for the artist, or if you publish, for the theorist or the writer to shine bright. And we are enabler. That's how I like to think also about curating. Like, you are collaborating, you are enabling, and you are not the person people should be talking about. They can mention you, but I'm very happy to become sort of a footnote in an artist's narrative. Footnotes are very important, but they are not the key for the visitor actually to experience an exhibition or any other format for that matter.
You mentioned earlier photography and exclusion, that photography is still a medium of exclusion. Could you elaborate on this? Because I think it's important to really see this, you know, that because photography is one of the main form of representation of the world we live in.
Yes.
And they're used everywhere. Photographs are used everywhere and all the time. And they are kind of a direct mirror of society.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that it's still a medium of exclusion, especially for marginalized groups. So what are your views on this?
Yeah, I think it doesn't take a lot of effort to think about the idea of a medium which includes. When I got back sort of my own journey as someone dealing with visual culture or photography, I realized that so many images I looked at were sort of influenced by colonial gaze, by the idea of an anti-feminist approach towards taking an image of a person, by the idea that certain groups are not really part of our visual culture. They weren't 50 years ago and they are not nowadays, or certain particular communities who have been visually sort of portrayed in a very particular way. That's very influenced by the way I think about how exclusion and the medium of photography are still intertwined. And therefore, I think I draw a lot of motivation to actually tackle those notions, those perceptions who are sort of long-standing, knowing there's a wide array of authors, photographers, artists who are strongly and boldly putting out what actually their ideas are. And I think it's really important to be aware that this is still what's happening nowadays.
Yeah.
Not because of certain communities who were very active during the past 12 or 18 months, like looking at Black Lives Matter protests. Yeah, those protests have been happening for a long time. But like the media outlets, they only started to become more aware of it in this real moment of crisis. And I think, this is thanks to us not really, or like me, not paying enough attention. That's also coming from someone who was actually based in different parts of the world. And I made also those experiences myself, what it means to look inside from the outside. But it takes a lot of effort, and it's our duty to put that effort in, to question those ways of looking at someone else or to be looked at.
I think this is super important, because the more people are going to be aware of this, the more people are going to question their practice, question what they look at, and the more you're going to have the emergence of different ways to do it, and it's going to be so much more interesting, I think. Also, it's so much more exciting and so much more, really exciting to discover, to have exchange and collaborate with people.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it clearer how complex those different ways of seeing and looking and being looked at actually are. It's not the white male gaze who is the one we want to talk about again in 50 years. I hope it's going to be a different narrative.
Where are we at, do you think, in our visual culture about the days, the female days, the male days, the queer days, any kind of days?
I'm still really questioning this concept of the idea of a female gaze, because I still believe that patriarchy is a very long-standing concept.
Yep.
And I really think that it's not that easy to actually deny visually this concept. So even though there are a lot of artists who claim this idea of the female gaze, I'm not sure if this concept actually still is really interesting to think about, let's say. So I would rather think about different sort of perspectives and to actually be very precise about what those perspectives, and in that sense, what those kind of gazes, what their role is, because I think it's really difficult. I do believe that it becomes increasingly multifaceted, those different sort of ways of looking at someone and taking their image, of collaborating also in creating an image. Yeah, obviously, thanks to a lot of people being more aware, there are also more voices being more visible with their idea of how to look for agency, both for themselves, their communities. In that regard, I'm actually pretty excited, because I think that there are more platforms being created and more people also taking up their space where they rightfully belong.
Yeah,
I'm more positive than I was a couple of years ago.
Good. Good. Could you talk about what it means for you to be aware of your own limitations and realizing you have some? How important this is for you?
I'm a white woman and I was socialized. I was brought up in Western society. So I have countless privileges I am more or less aware of. Therefore, I have a lot of things I need to unlearn. And I think it's a process which is going to be part of my life as a person, as a mother, as the director of an institution. And I'm very aware. I mean, although there are certain things I would say that because of my biography, I'm more aware, sort of coming from a working class background, with limited access to certain things. But then again, being brought up in Switzerland, where I could choose my path, I was able to study. But then when I think my limitations became also created through a societal framework, became clearer when I became a mother. So that still has a huge influence on the way I also see things. Like my kid is teaching me a lot of lessons also about our society and how ingrained certain things are. So I think I'm pretty aware.
Kids are great for that. They keep reminding you and pointing you in the right directions.
And they have no shame, which is amazing. They're very direct. Basically, they do not give a about anything. So they're very good teachers in that sense.
So in your opinion, what are the social responsibilities of a museum or an institution, that acquires and exhibit artwork, what are the advantage, disadvantage from public to private institutions?
I mean, I think we carry a great deal of responsibility as institutions, mainly to rewrite stories, existing narratives, to really question narratives and create places for dialogues. I think it's a responsibility to question what is happening in society, politically. If we are not asking the questions as institutions, what other role do we actually have in society? So we are not an island. I think no institution is an island. I think it would help institutions in arts and culture to actually believe in a concept of archipelagos, that we are sort of interconnected through certain questions, and to actually also not to be afraid of making it also our goal to find ways to carry this responsibility.
Yeah, cool. How do we louden the voice of change and women in society, in our society, beyond the museum walls?
I think whenever I'm invited to be part of a crit in an art school, to take part in a jury process, I believe it's really important to make sure that people get enough time and space to take space and to be loud and to voice their opinion.
Yep.
And to also create a framework where development of projects, of ideas is possible, and maybe to find ways to not be too dependent on economical issues. And that's, I know, the case for all of us, but it has to be possible to find time and space to actually formulate also resistance, because I think resistance can be very productive.
Yeah.
You need to have the privilege to form ideas of resistance as a woman, as a feminist, as a queer person.
Yeah.
And it's not the case for all of us.
No, that's for sure. And life makes it difficult to do so.
Yes. Yeah.
It makes it really difficult more and more, I feel, to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for women or non-binary artists and professionals in the arts to stand up against inequality and to be empowered?
Yeah, what I always find very helpful is to ask questions, because usually, or in many times, I'm not saying that's always the case, but many times exclusion does not happen because of evil people, or not only because there are evil people. Many times it's just being unaware, being focused on other things, not maybe being that politically interested. And then it only helps to ask questions like, okay, why does this process look that way? Did you think about, and that can maybe be the start of a dialogue. But I'm also aware that this takes a lot of energy. So I'm not saying everybody has that kind of energy.
Yeah.
If I'm asked for sort of a tip, I would always say try and ask questions, and then maybe there is the possibility that someone is actually listening to why those questions are being asked, because obviously they're asked for a reason.
Yeah.
Not to say anything, it's not going to change it, but that takes energy.
Stay curious.
Yes. Stay curious and stay bold, because no one has waited for any of us in that sense.
Yeah,
so,
and nobody has time to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah, and then again, to have this concept of caring for others, to care for your allies, because then it creates networks, and then it becomes stronger to go against ideas of like resistance, and maybe also against the idea of freedom in that very sort of political sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So about being bold, you mentioned you're keeping a kind of a punk attitude. I like that. In regards to your choices and standing up against criticism. Yes, raw and radical, right? Could you tell us a bit more about this punk attitude?
Yeah, that's what I also really liked about the name of your podcast.
Yes.
I think that, this punk attitude has, like I said in the beginning, has a lot to do with sort of the way I started to work, to form as a person when I was very young. And what I really like about having at least partially still a punk attitude is that punk is also about failing. It's not about perfection. It's always about, looking at things in sort of a very broad sense, and to find a detail you can actually cling to, and then to be very dive into this nitty-gritty, and while actually not really thinking about what people could think of that process. Obviously, we all are interested in validation, and we all are interested in being positively looked at. But I realized that I can't do my job the way I would like to do my job if I'm constantly being bothered by what everybody else is going to think about me.
Yeah.
It has proven to be the right mindset, because like I said, expectations are always there. They always going to hunt you down in the middle of the night. And I won't find any peace of mind if I'm constantly bothered by what everybody else is thinking. And I think it has also to do with this very notion of women wanting to please and not wanting to fail, because if we take chances, we cannot fail. And it's, like you say, it's also to be able to sort of being aware of vulnerabilities without forgetting the strength, which actually is tied, directly linked to vulnerability.
Yeah. You know, that makes me think that I feel like in our societies, we don't learn enough about how to fail and how to deal with failure. Because when you think about school, you have to make sure you don't fail. Failing is bad. You have to not fail every time. And I think this whole notion of embracing the failure and learning how to do with it, this is something we all have to learn, to really use it for it to bring us forward better. And it's something as a society we don't do. So it's very important to talk about that.
I totally agree. Because without trying, you are never failing. But that's just that's just not how anything was achieved ever.
That's the whole illusion. So embrace the failure.
Exactly. Thanks.
This podcast is supported by Pro Helvetia, the Swiss Arts Council, the Republic and Canton of Geneva, and the city of Lancy in Switzerland. We are so thankful for their support and commitment to women, culture, and the arts. Thanks for listening to Raw and Radical Women in the Arts podcast. Learn more about our featured artists and sign up for news and updates by visiting our website rawradical.com.
Organic, radical, profound.
Please consider leaving us a comment and review on your preferred podcast listening platform to help others discover the show and take part in this global dialogue.
She, intuitive.
I am Maureen Broadbeck, and until next time, keep the dream alive.
Woman.